Good morning to one and all. I would like to welcome all of you to our 14th Global Webinar Series organized by Chinmaya Vishwa. I am Dr. Neelu Rosepol, Assistant Professor and Clinical Psychologist from the School of Philosophy, Psychology and Scientific Heritage, Chinmaya Vishwa, deemed to be University. I am going to be the moderator for this webinar series. Today, we have a session on the topic, the importance of civil services in today's context. And I take this opportunity to welcome today's speaker, the man of the hour, whom we have with us, Sri K. Sripathi, retired IAS officer, former Chief Secretary to Tamil Nadu. Sir is a postgraduate in Science and Business Administration. He joined Indian Administrative Services in the year 1975. He is a multilingualist, knowing many Indian and foreign languages. He worked in both the Government of India and in Tamil Nadu in several capacities. He has held several vital and critical posts both in Tamil Nadu government and central government. At the center, he played a sterling role as the author of National Housing Policy and National Urban Transport Policy, besides making contributions in many important areas in Tamil Nadu government. He held high-profile posts, leaving his indelible mark wherever he was posted, like Chairman of Tamil Vigilance Commissioner, Chief Information Commissioner, ending his illustrious career as a Chief Secretary to Government of Tamil Nadu. Monumental buildings and centers like Anna Library, etc. bear testimonies to his capabilities. He has also widely traveled editorial to polar region. He is a totally integrated personality and a model executive for all. He is now the chairman of the Guild Services, a voluntary organization which runs 22 institutions, projects covering wide range of social aspects, taking care of the needs of the children from poor family backgrounds, physically and mentally challenged children and adults. I welcome you, sir, for the global series of webinars. It's our honor and privilege to have you with us today, sir. I'm sure we'll all be enriched by the seminar. Once again, I welcome you, sir, to this global webinar series.
Thank you, all of you. Season's greetings, namaste, and everyone who is watching this and listening to me. Thank you and very good morning. Vanakkam, namaste. Now, today's topic, that is the importance of civil service. For our own convenience, I have divided into 4 segments. That is one, what the historians call as ancient India, but I don't consider that to be ancient, is pre-invasion days, then the invasion days, third, the British days, and fourth, the modern day India. Now, let me just capture the important role played by the civil services in all these 4, and I'll concentrate a little more on modern day India, which is much more relevant in contemporary India. Now, India, as such, the whole subcontinent had a wonderful civil service, which, whether you take the Mauryan Empire in the north or the Cherachola Pandya or Sangam period in the south, had a wonderful civil service structure. In fact, the Mauryan dynasty, the emperor, under him had the mantri, the Pradhan Mantri included. Then the Amatyas. Of course, these Amatyas had 3 different hierarchy, which was the highest, the intermediate, and the lowest. Then there are several departments. I mean, you may be even surprised to know that there was a department of weights and measures, a department of forests, textiles, besides the defense, and foreign policy. Okay. Now, if we come down to the south, during the Chola period, Navy played a major role. In fact, it was the first ever maritime power in the whole of the world during the Chola period. Therefore, they had several departments. They were called Danadigari, Dandal Nayagan, and various other institutions. In fact, the Uttarameru shepherd, that is the copper plates, describes, in fact, our Prime Minister Narendra Modi did make references to this very recently, which talks about the election and selection of the civil service officers in various capacities, starting from the villages right up to the top. And they were people of proven integrity, unimpeachable integrity, so to say, and matchless erudition. All Tom, Dick, and Harry could not become civil servant. Corruption was unknown, but if somebody was found caught, he was not just dismissed or removed, but he was put behind bars, not necessarily modern days bars, but something much worse than this. Okay, now come, and that is one of the main reasons why the administration, whether it was the Chalukyas, whether it was the Cherachola Pandyas, Nayaks, or Mauryas, or Guptas, whoever, the administration was superb. And we also had in the north the Guptachars and Votragal, that was the spies we had. Okay, so that is the kind of system which we enjoyed during those days. During the invasion, of course, from the Central Asia, the West, Afghanistan, and Iran, and places like that, there was a shake-up in the civil system of administration. But I would rate Sher Shah Soor as one of the best administrators who left behind a wonderful system of civil services. Then the Mughal kingdom, when it was established, it had a different type of systems with mansabs and satraps and persons like that coming into being. And one thing you will be really shocked to know that the element of corruption was sown, seeds were sown at that time with the regional satrap or mansab going up in hierarchy, depending upon the number of times he met the emperor or the chieftain, and the value of the presents and gifts he gave to the emperor. It was that. Anyway, the Mughals, I won't say had a wonderful system of civil service because they did not trust most of the people, and therefore there was continuous warfare, and therefore the civil service system did suffer, though it did exist. Then in 1765, I think it was Shah Alam II and Clive, Robert Clive, a guy who came just as a trader, got quite a bit of chunk in the West, in today's Bengal, as a sovereign land, and with that he also sowed the seeds of a British Empire which came up in future. I will not go into greater details on those things because we have a lot more time to spend on our own system presently. Now, slowly, in the East India Company, which was a trader, started setting up their own agents to collect. Today, it's being referred to as loot. And yes, they did that. These agents did nothing but that, but at the same time, they doubled up as magistrates, justices, this, that, everything. In 1772, Warren Hastings, when he came, he gave the name collector to the district officers. Till then, at the national level or the British level, it was not considered to be a superior post as far as the Governor General or where the headquarters was in Calcutta. So the district officer was given most important position, and he was called the collector. This particular name continues even today. In the presidencies, there is a Madras, Bengal, and Bombay presidencies. All these people are now called collectors only, and other places it's commissioner, deputy commissioner, and so on. They enjoyed vast powers, and the British depended totally on them. In fact, let me quote a statement from Stephen James in 1872 when he said, if the British government has to continue to hold a stranglehold on the Indians, mark the word, the Indians, we have to have a very strong civil force. We have to have a very strong civil force which will not buckle under the local pressure. And therefore, whatever be the reason, do not weaken it, strengthen it. Anyway, the East India Company, known for its all treacheries, looting, this and that, was then superseded by the Crown. In fact, in one of the books, this is called Corporate Violence, set up by the East India Company. Anyway, subsequently, after the Crown took over, the All India services were started in 1858, and it was only white men. The first ever person to come into the Indian civil service was Satyendranath Tagore, the brother of Rabindranath Tagore, whom all of you know. He resigned from this and then subsequently joined the Congress. He was made the president of the Congress in the 18th session. Now, things were such that Satyendranath Tagore, in his 18th session address, said, requested the British to continue to rule India because India is such a huge country and quite chaotic. Anyway, that is what is written in history. No further comments on that. Till 1909, there were only 60 Indians of the total strength of 1142 ICS officers. These ICS officers were given vast powers. They were more than just the Mansabs or Satraps or Nayaks or whatever. They had immense powers. In fact, give the devil its due, what these people did was they looked after the districts well, and many of them, especially the Indians, had a compassion for the local Indians. And the civil services survived with no problem. Okay, now after 1920s, the government started thinking in terms of giving more and more powers to the Indians, and therefore the civil services had also to be changed a little bit, and therefore it had to go through certain motions of modification. Mainly because the British found that the freedom struggle is gaining more and more strength, and the civil service officers may not be in a position to quell these riots. Therefore, like that, I would not like to go into all those details. Then come independence. This is where we have. No, before that, let me also say, 1858, I said all-day services were, the ICS was created, and the more compassionate Brits decided that there should be some statutes, there should be some policies to govern, and therefore, in 1861, there was CRPC, 1862, IPC, Criminal Procedure Code, Indian Penal Code, and 1864, the Indian Evidence Act were created. Then we had the municipal corporations in both Madras, in all the three metropolitan cities, namely Madras, Calcutta, and Bombay. In fact, Madras is supposed to be the second municipal corporation after London in the world. Then the universities were set up, chartered high courts were set up, these things were started, but still the gain for freedom went up and up with Mahatma Gandhi and the Quit India movement, everything coming into play. The Brits started leaving. Come 1947, we became an independent India, and this is the independent India about which the civil service of which I'm going to talk a little more. Now, in the Constituent Assembly, it's a very interesting aspect. There was a serious debate on continuing with the civil services, especially in the form of ICS. In fact, Mahavir Tyagi said, people resented the white skin, but they resented the ICS officers much more than anybody. I was a little surprised and shocked to read in published history that Mahatma Gandhi also was opposed to this ICS. But anyway, he subsequently just gave it up. And Nehru is one of the persons who also opposed this. Sorry for this. But Sardar Patel was the one and only one who is later called the Iron Man of India. Yes, he was the one who thundered in the Constituent Assembly stating that, why are you blaming the instruments? The civil service officers are nothing but instruments. Only a poor workman blames his instruments. Don't blame them. Take work from them. In fact, you have quite a lot to learn from them. These people are known only to create a problem to the British who are ruling us. And you think we know quite a bit about administration? Governance is something totally different. Learn from them. Make the best use of them. And if you think a civil service cannot exist, I go out. Anyway, the civil services came into being. That was renamed as Indian Administrative Service. Interestingly, in 1948, when the Indian Administrative Service came up, that is, all India services were created, the foreign policies, which were never handled by the Indians, because India was not part of, it was not a sovereign country, everything was being decided by the British, but we had a small office which was looking after the foreign issues, that is all. And subsequently, Commonwealth Secretariat and things like that which came up, and Secretary was handling this. And everything was being handled directly by the Foreign Office of Britain. Okay. So the Foreign Service also came into being. And to say, in the IAS, the first batch, 1948, one Chief Thirumalai was a topper coming out of cadre, and in Foreign Service, one KPS Manan, senior, became the number one as far as Foreign Service is concerned. All the other services, including the IPS, later on Indian Forest Service, and all the other All India services were created. Now, why I'm telling that is very important. The All India services have been given a constitutional provision under Article 312. Okay. Now, coming to personal anecdotes of many of these officers, many of the civil servants, many a time, stray thoughts of the civil servants have become very important political decisions. The stray thoughts of one individual, that is one G. Ramchandran, who was with Mrs. Gandhi, who was just casually talking to her about certain issues. At that time, getting loans for the agricultural purposes or any other purposes from the banks became an impossible task. So he was just thinking, why not we nationalize more banks? There came the bank nationalization policy. And then the ICS officers, retired officers were being given pension by way of pound sterling. That was also withdrawn when we had a massive crisis as far as economics were concerned. They were not denied pension, but the pound sterling was just withdrawn. The bank nationalization case is one of the very good examples. Not only that, in fact, the policies, different policy frameworks were drafted by the civil service. And it is not just within India, but even the security services. See, when I talk about civil service, I do not confine myself to the Indian Administrative Service, though that happens to be the number one service as far as administration is concerned. Now, if for a moment think that there were no ambassadors, there were no civil service, foreign service officers in Kuwait, in Yemen, in Afghanistan now, you think such massive evacuations could have happened? So all these unsung heroes, the civil service officers who are sitting there facing bullets, still massive evacuation was done in these places. In fact, America requested the government of India to help in evacuating their own officers, their own people from these war-torn countries. Now come to the districts, which is today the most important. I said that the Brits themselves started thinking that if you want to control the Indian subcontinent, you have to have a mechanism at the field level, and that is how the district officers started. The district officers were manned by ICS officers at that time. I said 1722, Warren Hastings called them collectors, and therefore the collectors started manning. They were all in one go-to person in the district. They were the eyes and ears of the government, and anything and everything was possible for him. He was an omnipotent kind of a person, which the people considered. In fact, there was an interesting study which took 4 points, only parameters. That is, one, most trustworthy. The last one was least trustworthy. Okay, on that scale, when people, some of them, select few people were asked to evaluate, believe me, other than the courts and the army, the one and only office which was considered to be most trustworthy was the district office. That is named the district collector. It does not deal with the trustee or the judge or anybody for matter. The most trustworthy person, because the people, everybody wanted to go to the district collector. In fact, let me quote one interesting incident when I was collector. Normally, we start talking about our own handling of situations. In one particular case, some gentleman, suited, booted, walked into my room and then said, "Look at this postmaster, he refuses to pay me 5 paise." Those days, the money order form cost 5 paise. Then, why, what happened? No, the money order form which he gave, I paid 5 paise, did not have the place for writing something. So I returned it and then asked him to give my 5 paise back. The postmaster has refused to give. After I argued, that is, this person is quoting, after I argued, the postmaster said, "I will give you the 5 paise, I cannot take the form back because you have started." He said, "How can you do that?" So this is a funny situation. At that time, the collector had nothing to do with the post office. But anyway, this gentleman was told, "No, no, I'll tell the postmaster, please go and do some things." So I picked up the phone, called up the postmaster. "Why are you getting into this kind of mess?" Yes? So this, why are you getting into the creating this kind of mess, sir? Okay, it's 5 paise, it's all right. Now you take that, tear it off, you give another form, the 5 paise if you want, I can send it. No, this is the that's why I said all in one go-to man is a district officer. Okay, whether it is law and order, this or that or any such thing. Now come to Government of India level, the secretaries play a very important role. In fact, the policies are drafted by them. Say, for example, Constitution 73rd and 74th Amendment, which has given powers to the local bodies, where at one stage I was one of the instruments in that. So most of, because at that time I was transferred, therefore I cannot say that I was the main instrument. The drafting of this legislation is an important task, which without the civil service officers, I don't think any politician or anybody else can do. Now, if I say civil service, it does not mean only IAS. I keep repeating that. It includes the central secretariat service officers, the doctors, everything, everybody forms part of the civil service. Anybody other than the military service is a civil servant. That we should understand. But IAS plays a major role. Now, when in the state, when the transition took place, I am talking about Tamil Nadu, from the Congress party to the DMK, the then chief secretary walks into the chief minister's room, and the chief minister just gets up and says, "Sir, we know only to agitate. We know only to find fault with the government. We know nothing about the government. You please handhold us." So T.A. Varghese himself told me at a particular point, said, "Yes, we had to tell him that this is budget, this is how we conduct law and order meetings, this is how we represent the government of India, this is how we do." See, it's a permanent civil service. Politicians come and politicians go. Parties come and parties go with different ideologies, different imperatives, but still the paradigm which is ever changing, the only thing is very constant. That is, the change is very constant.
Sripathi ji, I have a request. Could you come closer to the screen? We are not able to hear very well.
Okay, now.
Yeah, better. Thank you.
Okay, so could you hear most of the part or only some portion?
No, we could hear, but it was very faint, so it was a little difficult. That's
okay. Now, so you want me to go back to whatever I said? That will take a little.
No,
not necessary. Okay.
Not necessary.
I was talking about the state, say Tamil Nadu. When C.N. Annadurai became the chief minister, G. Ramchandran, who was in the finance department, had to sit and explain to him the process of budgeting in the state. See, budgeting, even in a household, is not an easy task. You ask the home managers, they will know what is what. But many people like us may not even know what is what, how much money we earn, how much money we spend, this and that may not know. But budgeting is a complex exercise. So, not having the civil service can never be a situation where any government can survive. Whether it is an oligarchy, monarchy, today's communism, or the master of every other governance, democracy, there has to be a permanent civil service. These are the people who are known for their knowledge, continuous knowledge. Okay. Now, there's one saying in Sanskrit, Evam Veda, Yopsnavam Pratishtidam Veda. That is, the captain of the ship knows the waters, whether it is still water, undercurrent water, whatever. So the role played by the civil servant is just that. Okay, that is what has to be understood. Well, with a change, there will be criticism. Somebody might not have got whatever he wanted. Somebody might have got everything he wanted. Therefore, there will be two aspects. I was mentioning about the trust. I'm going to mention about one more study which is conducted. Of course, it is most applicable to the American government, where this gentleman, Fukuyama, plotted the efficiency with the autonomy of the civil service. Most of us think that today's civil servant is nothing but a cog in the wheel and he has nothing to do on his own. But that is totally incorrect. Now, what he says is this: if you plot efficiency and autonomy on the y and x axis, there will be a parabola, inverted parabola or inverted U. One end when the autonomy is least and the efficiency is also least, when there is total subordination. At the other end, when there is total autonomy and very minimal political will, the overall administrative governance is going to be minimal. So there is a line, there is a peak where there is an autonomy, there is a political will, and there is efficiency. Superb. Yes, that is what is the one. That's what Sardar Patel said. The civil service officers are instruments. Make the best use of them. So it depends on which government, which policy decision makers are there. Civil service officers to take the politicians to the proper direction. Okay, I can quote a number of examples. Say, for example, the tsunami, which many of you may be aware, may not be aware. It was handled purely by the civil service. No political interference was there. Whether it is drought-related situation, whether it is evacuation I told you about, or flooding, the civil service comes into existence. Now, we have a population of more than 1.3 billion. Now, the greatest success today in the whole world is vaccinating 1 billion people. When the whole world said India will take 15 years to vaccinate, somebody said, no, it is impossible to vaccinate this, that, everything. Several media outside, including our own social media, said it is impossible. Who was responsible? Well, yes, any credit is taken by the political bosses. Yes, absolutely right. After all, it is not Rajaraja Chola who built the temple. It is those people who were there, the Amatyas, the Mantris, but the name goes to Rajaraja Chola. That's it, absolutely. So we cannot find fault with that. Therefore, the government of today, yes, to its credit. But if today the whole world looks at us with awe, it is mainly because of our achievement in the information technology. They are also a service. Information technological services are there. Biotechnology, medicine, we are supplying medicine. Can you believe it? All the medicine were being imported, whether it was penicillin or this or that or whatever. These are all being imported. Who did that? The civil service officers. So why this talk about whether we should have a civil service or not? See, the debate between the generalists and the technocrats will go on forever. I don't think there will be any end to it. As I said, change is the only thing which is constant in this paradigm of governance. So it will keep on happening. So that one need not be deterred by this. In fact, sometimes the ministers, depending upon which background he has, we have seen several of them, somebody from a total rustic background who does not know what is what about India will have his own ideology. You have to mold them. The civil service officer will have to mold him. Like, I will give you one very, very, very tricky issue. Maybe many of you would remember about the coastal regulation zone. Coastal regulation zone, which mentions that on the coast side, 1 kilometer, there can be no structure. There are some exceptions, this, that, everything that was being formulated when I happened to be the Secretary Environment, and well, several rounds of discussions took place, and there is a blanket ban on any construction. So I had to tell them the entire economy of Kerala, Goa, Maharashtra, Tamil Nadu, which is 1160 kilometers of coastal, the entire Andaman and Nicobar Islands, Odisha, Andhra Pradesh, Bengal, everything depends upon the coastal economy. And how the hell you can say this is so many words, in so many words. How the hell can you think that no activities in 1 kilometer? You expect the fishermen to be pushed back by about 1 kilometer? Anyway, see, this is the kind of a thing. It's a political diktat. So this gentleman could do nothing, but this gentleman had to be told, I'm talking about secretary, go and tell your political boss, yes, this cannot be done. This is absolute rubbish. Okay, this is what a civil servant can do and has to do. Okay, very recently, Rukma, you can tell me when the time is over. Okay.
Okay, there is still time. We can take questions in the end if there are any. So 20 minutes.
Okay. Now, so after when the civil service officers, there are, okay, now let me put it this way, it will feel funny looking. Recently, maybe about 5-6 years back, there was a study conducted by some NGO on the civil services. In fact, it was with particular reference to IAS, which many people started criticizing. So 2 of the officers described this civil service as wives component, nuns, NUN, nun component, and the third one, call girl component. Don't take me amiss on any such thing. This is written. Okay, the wives component is one where the officers just are wedded to a particular party. It may be X party, Y party, Z party, and therefore, whenever that particular party is in position, these people will have plum postings and the diktat of the political party concerned will be done. The second one, nun, NUN, nuns. They are not attached to anybody, they mind their own business, and they would not yield to any pressure from any quarter. They will keep doing their things, and most of the times they do quite well, and many a time some irritated politician will get him or her kicked out to Kanyakumari or Kashmir quarter. And the third one is a set of people who would switch allegiance with no impunity. No matter which party, they will immediately cling on to that party and then try to anchor after this position or that position. Now, fortunately for us, for India, the third category is very minimal. In fact, T.N. Seshan, the venerable Seshan, who created history by making the politicians understand what Indian electoral process is, called the Indian officers, Indian Administrative Service as a set of call girls. There was protest, this, that, everything. So he also mentioned that. But this does not mean that the vast majority of the civil services officers have that. They still belong to the nun category, quite a bit of them, though the number is slightly eroding. Now, let me come down to the district level where the civil service is very important and it's a backbone of the administration of entire India. I would just refer to as the district officer for a simple reason. The British found that if you have to keep the British authority in India, you must definitely have a very strong district officer. And therefore, what happened subsequently, the district officer definitely started doing his work, and many of them started throwing around his or her way. Letting women folk into the ICS was not known. Very unfortunate. But anyway, after India became independent, yes, women folk also came into the services. Let me quote an interesting anecdote, though this has nothing to do with the administration civil service. The UPSC, while conducting interviews, those days, personality, the question marks will be about quite a major thing. You'll have to go for an interview. You'll be suddenly confronted with secretaries to government of India, or generals, or judges, somebody, and you are a tiny little fellow sitting there not knowing what to do, how to do. Okay, one particular lady who had secured very high marks and wanted to get into foreign service. You know what the discussion was? Believe me, somebody said, no, this girl looks very pretty, and therefore if she is selected to IFS, she will get married, and therefore we will get into a problem of giving postings to her and her husband. She promptly said, I'm not going to get married. But none of this would sell. She got into the IAS. Then subsequently, she became Secretary to Government of India and retired, but didn't marry at all. Anyway, that's besides. I'm just giving, a side anecdote. See, planning, for example. Any amount of planning, whether it is from the rural. We used to have the 5-year plans where the whole thing was decided by the National Planning Commission. And then it was top-down approach. So guys who are sitting in Delhi, not knowing the east or west or south, would be planning for the development of India. In fact, I'll give you a very interesting thing. Many of you may be from Kerala, many of you may be from areas where there are hills. And for those houses, the design given by Government of India is just one roof, one slope. In the hills, the rains do not come in from one direction, all the 4 directions. Now, what do you do with this kind of a stuff? So the state government had to say that this is rubbish. You cannot think Delhi is India and India is Delhi, and therefore the design requires to be modified to suit local conditions. And that is how the housing development program went into a total change and not necessarily top-down approach. After that, it came from the rural side. The district development board at that time, district development councils, now it has become something else. They started planning. So the civil servants played a major. And the plans were set to the Government of India through the state government, the National Planning Commission approved it, then the National Development Council, now it is Niti Aayog. After that, the Government of India gives approval for these things. So at every stage, whether it is a national policy or a state policy or a district policy or rural policy, it is the civil service officer who does major work. I would say donkey's work. But he does not get recognized, but there is no need to get recognition at all, because the civil service officer is told of anonymity of civil service. What you do, and again Bhagavad Gita says, you do what is your job. Forget about the results. Don't run after publicity. And unfortunately, today there are people who run after publicity, even for the slightest of things. They have somebody or the other with the camera, and then it goes viral and A, B, C. This is an unfortunate situation, but well, one has to sail with whatever is happening in this field. Now, I wanted to cover only on the general aspect. Now, I will reserve quite a bit of it for the question and answer session if you have any. But to conclude, let me say that the office of the civil service, whether it was the district, state, or Government of India, evolved over a period of time. And as I said, they were the guiding forces behind all the political bosses, whether it was the mighty Indira Gandhi of those days, today's Narendra Modi, or the chief ministers, starting from, I'm talking about Tamil Nadu, even Morarji Desai had to be guided. At that time, I don't know whether I mentioned this, when we had independence, it was absolute chaos. Nobody knew what was what. Nehru did not know what was administration. But there were some exceptions like B.C. Roy in West Bengal, I think Sri Krishna Sinha in Bengal, Biju Patnaik in Odisha, Morarji Desai in Bombay, Rajaji and C. Subramaniam in Tamil Nadu. These were the people who knew. But the rest of India, none of them knew what is governance. In fact, I told you about Mr. Anadre telling the then CS, P.A. Varghese, sir, we are known only to criticize and then create problems. We do not know what is administration. So leave all that out. Tell us how we go about it. In fact, in one of the biographies, I won't name the person. He is no more, but still. When Rajiv Gandhi was not even a prime minister, he was asked to go and brief him about budgetary processes, about what is economy of India, how we go about, what is defense. It's there in the autobiography, but I would not like to name the person concerned. Because again, anonymity of self-service. Everything, many of these things were guided. Many of these politicians were guided by these officers. So the fulcrum happens to be the IAS. If you think, if any of you want to get into civil service, and I say that you should, just don't be bothered about what is being talked about in social media, what is being talked about in the print and electronic media. The best service to opt for is the civil service. Forget about IAS, forget about IFS. If you get even, let us say, the income tax service, the IRTS, the railway traffic service, can you quote a service, a public service all over the world, which is transporting millions and millions of people on a particular day, whether it is Bombay or Madras or from Delhi to Kanyakumari? That is the kind of civil service we have had and we will continue to have. The civil service is the backbone. On the IT sector, they say we build the backbone and then give them the terabyte, megabyte, and all kinds of bytes. It is the backbone which holds India together. I'll narrate another incident. That was way back in 1991. I had a chance meeting with Nainan, who was then the editor of Economic Times of India. Okay. On that day, it so happened there was a big article about the Indian Administrative Service. The title was IAS, the Bane of India. Okay. This is a full-page article. It so happened. So I told him, yeah, what a wonderful article. Have you known what is IAS? Did you apply for IAS and fail? So it's a tongue-in-cheek question. So this man just looked at me, laughed at me, and then said, sir, may I say something? Please welcome, you have said any amount. Nothing is going to hurt me more. He said, if India is together today, this he's telling in 1991, it is these three services which have held India together. I can say that without any reservation. I said, why the hell have you written like this? Sir, this is commercial. IAS bashing sells, and I have to please my boss. You understand? So these comments will definitely keep coming, just don't be bothered. Now, why I say this is, the social media today, it is like the nuclear structure, nuclear energy. It can be used for good purposes, great purposes. Okay, it can be used for destructive purposes. I don't think I need to expatiate on that as far as social media is concerned. It is for you to decide. You get information. There's one saying, Ano Badra Hitavo Yanta Vishwa. Okay, what does it mean? It says you gather information from all over, wherever it comes from. Okay, then try to get knowledge from information, get knowledge. From knowledge, become a wise person, wisdom. When you are a person of wisdom, convert that into action. Then you are that statement, which is again another tenet of the Rig Veda, Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya. Okay. That leads you to Evam Veda, Yopsunavam Pratishtavam Veda. Okay. So that is what I wanted to say. And you know what the motto of the services, the LBS in A, where all the services are trained, foundation course, Yoga Karmasa Kaushalam. Okay, that is what we are, all the civil service officers are. So I'll stop here. Now, anything more I can answer. I did not go into specific service, but it is not required because the entire set of civil services are being ridiculed today. Somebody says, no, wind up. This, okay, this has been said. In fact, let me quote one R.P. Norona. He was an ICS officer. R.P. Norona, ICS officer, Madhya Pradesh. What he said was, all these officers, including IAS, IPS, All India Service Officers, are from ordinary background. But they are driven with a certain flair for doing public work. They gather knowledge whenever they move forward. They become wise persons and they never waver from this way or that way. And this is the strength of the civil service. But unfortunately, like everything else happens, there are some worms which have come into this. The steel frame has started rotting. I have only one thing to say, it does not rot. Yes, there is some rust somewhere that can always be removed. So it's all in your hands. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for the wonderful session. There are certain questions from the participants. May I ask you, sir?
Yeah, please go ahead.
I think it is from the young aspirants who wanted to pursue the career as a civil service. So the first question is, how do we can overcome the distractions that occur in the UPSC journey, sir?
UPSC?
Journey, like while they are preparing for UPSC.
Okay. Yeah. I get. See, the gentleman or lady, whoever asked, use the word distraction. Now, what is required is focus. If there is no focus, however great you are, you will not succeed in anything. So what is required? A goal. No, I won't give you a technical lecture on you do this, you do that, nothing of the sort. Are you focused? Do you have a goal? I want to get into a civil service. Yes or no? If you say yes, think about it. So there is something called auto-suggestion, which the Western philosophers say, which is there in our own system. Akshibhyam te suktam. That's it. I am suggesting to myself, I am great. I will do it. If you think you can do it, you will never do it. If you think I will do it, you will do it. Distraction. See, today's social media, whether it is WhatsApp or Facebook or anything else, okay, the amount of distractions it gives is amazing. I cannot say. You know it. If you want to see, I don't say that you should never see, but give a little bit of time. Maybe half an hour, maybe 1 hour. Never beyond that. And not necessarily everything which comes in the social media is absolute rubbish many times. Okay, so distraction, if you use the word, never ever think of this word distraction. You are not distracted. If you are distracted, you will be distracted. Yes. Where do you want to go and attend to something which is totally irrelevant to you? You want to succeed. Success. Nothing is successful like success. Simple. I'm not giving you any jargon. Simple principle you adopt. You think for yourself, you can do it.
Sir, another question from the question is, why are there so few civil servants in such a huge country?
Okay, now why I smiled is, even today, many people think that the civil service officers, I know about IAS, it's about 4,000. Other services, I do not know overall number. But these are the people who have to govern. Now, you cannot have one civil servant. I'm talking only about the IAS. Okay. Now, you take foreign service, to very little extent I know about. Now, that number is quite small. At 1 year, maybe the recruitment is 16, 17, maybe 20. Let's say 30. IAS is about 100. Why? The reason being, it's a huge department. We have several departments where we have to control other civil services. By other civil services, like for example, health. Imagine a person who is an exceedingly good cook is appointed a general. Understand? So now you have to manage. See, having a small number is always great because the concentration is very much on the work and not necessarily getting distracted. I'm using the word distracted. The number, when it is small, the urge to do things is much more than when it is quite huge. Say, for example, in the district, I'll talk about my own experience. We had only a collector and additional collector. Down below were only divisional officers, tahsildars, and vagara. Okay, today we have collector, we have a district development officer, we have a panchayat development officer, we have a first, you name a thing, there are at least about 3, 4 dozen, 5, 6 dozens. They are all civil service officers, but not IAS. So you imagine a situation where there is an IAS officer who is managing the RDO person. The sub-collector is there, he's only a training purpose. As a tahsildar, as a patwari, as a kanungo, as what not. It's just not required. What is required is such of those people who know what is what, who can assimilate things and then be the eyes and ears of the government. Okay, how China succeeded in the recent past is every citizen is made into a government, made to think, not made to think that he works for the government. How does Singapore maintains law and order? Every citizen is a government agent. Now, is it possible for us to do that? We have 1.3 billion people. Doesn't mean that you will have 10% of people as civil servants. No, that's just not possible. Look at the economy, the scale. This is more than sufficient. I would say it is more than what is required.
Okay, sir. Thank you. Sir, another, it's not a question, but one of the participants has told that during the session, he has missed out when you were mentioning the rail, transport and tax, but he didn't hear it clearly, it seems.
Which one
During your session, you were talking about the rail, transport and tax related topic. So the person hasn't clearly.
Okay. See, I was talking about the services. You correct me if this is not the point which he missed. When I was talking about the services, I just made a reference to the railway traffic service. Talking about the Indian Railways, which is one of the best today, though we also say that Indian Railways is one of the worst because that train, that the toilet is leaking, this is leaking, that all kinds of things we see. But there is no system in the whole world which transports millions and millions of people from Kashmir to Kanyakumari. Millions of tons of freight from this. It's all done by the civil service officers. This is what I mentioned.
Okay.
Is that one?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yeah,
Yeah,
sir.
okay.
Thank you. Sir, another question from one of our participants is, what advice you want to give for the future aspirants of civil service, sir?
Okay. See, one of my statements was, in this paradigm of governance, change is the only constant thing which is happening. Okay. Now, the civil service officers who aspire to get into the IAS or any civil service for that matter will face complex issues, much more complex than what we faced. Today, the way IT sector has grown up, we did not imagine. We had the olden day telephone, many of you may not even remember. Like you just pick up the phone, somebody from the exchange will say which number you want, and then you say disconnect, then call back. These are all things which happen. But today, no, you can be inside a forest, which has happened to me. I was on Mount Kailash on a trek, and suddenly I get a phone call on my mobile phone. These things happen. See, this is the kind of technological growth, development which has taken place. Now you have to be attuned to this kind of changes. Just writing an examination and then going and attending an interview, becoming an IAS officer is not going to be helpful at all. From archaeological survey to zoonosis. This is what I keep telling. An IAS officer is supposed to handle things. Tsunami, I don't think anybody would have experienced. Maybe hardly a few. Handful would have vanished. Drought situation, flood situation, evacuation, this and that. Maybe a small number would handle. Now, my advice would be, well, first focus, think that you can win first, then keep yourself abreast of whatever is happening around you, whether it is on the international scene, internal scene, security included, cyber security included, because police is a civil service, civil police is a civil service. There you need several expert organizations have come up in this. This tussle between generalists and experts will definitely be there, will continue to be there. Continuous reformation is always there. So just don't worry, whatever is being said about civil servant, just ignore it. Read it, laugh at it, and then ignore it. Please go ahead, prepare for yourself, but keep yourself abreast of whatever is happening. Because today's technology may be totally irrelevant tomorrow. From 1G, 2G, 3G, we have come to the 5G, and then somebody gives on a WhatsApp, there is 7G technology. God knows what it is. Okay. So when you get into that kind of a civil service, maybe there is 7G. Keep yourself abreast.
Okay, sir. Thank you. We are about to close our meeting. Before that, I would like to extend my sincere gratitude to you, sir, on behalf of Chinmaya Vishwa. I know you are actually in your busy schedule, find some time and inspired with your incredible talk. We are so fortunate to have you here, sir. And we also got to have an understanding about a person who wants to participate closely in the process of building society and wants to bring about some positive changes should certainly try for Indian civil services. There is nothing better than this profession. So we greatly had a good understanding about how it evolved and the role of civil servants in the policy making and nation building, which would definitely contribute to the overall development of our country. So thank you so much, sir, being with us today. So there is this is absolutely was a knowledge sharing webinar for all of us. Thank you so much for sparing your wonderful time with us. And we are so fortunate to have you here, sir. And now I would like to thank all the participants who have joined for the webinar. Thank you all for joining for today's session. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you.